Every trader begins their journey with the same spark of hope. They open their first account with excitement, believing they've finally discovered the path to financial freedom. The charts look like puzzles waiting to be solved, the numbers look like opportunities, and the dream of multiplying money feels close enough to touch. But what most traders don't realize is that the greatest threat to their account isn't the market, the brokers, or even a lack of strategy. The greatest enemy lives inside their own mind. This is why so many traders, no matter how much knowledge they collect, end up blowing accounts over and over again. They think the problem is their strategy, so they switch from one system to another. They think the problem is their broker, so they change platforms. They think the problem is bad luck, so they try again, hoping fortune will turn in their favor. Yet nothing changes, because they've never addressed the real issue, their relationship with risk. Risk is not numbers on a screen. Risk is emotion. Risk is the fear of losing and the greed of wanting more, colliding in the mind of the trader every single time they press, buy, or sell. Risk is the silent force that makes your heart race when you see your trade in the red, or tempts you to double your lot size after a win. Risk is the hidden battlefield where most traders lose, not to the market, but to themselves. Think about the last time you blew an account. Was it because your strategy had zero edge? Or was it because you broke your own rules? Most traders don't blow accounts because their system was wrong. They blow accounts because they abandoned discipline when emotions took over. They risked too much on one trade. They refused to take a small loss and let it grow into a massive one. They added to a losing position, convinced it had to turn around. And every decision was fueled by a distorted perception of risk. Here's the cruel truth. Blowing accounts is rarely an accident. It's a pattern. The mind of the trader creates it. The moment you ignore your risk rules, the seed of destruction is planted. And the more times you justify breaking those rules, the faster your account burns. Risk management isn't about numbers, it's about psychology. The rules are simple. Never risk more than you can afford to lose. Keep your lot sizes consistent, and protect your capital first. But if it were just about simple math, no one would blow accounts. The problem isn't knowing the rules. The problem is following them when your emotions are screaming at you to break them. The cycle usually begins with overconfidence. A trader takes a few wins and suddenly feels untouchable. The market seems easy, the strategy seems flawless, and they believe this time they've cracked the code. Confidence quickly turns into arrogance, and arrogance turns into reckless risk. The lot sizes grow, the stop losses shrink, and one bad trade erases weeks of progress. The account plunges, and instead of accepting the loss, the trader doubles down, desperate to win it all back. That's when the account implodes. Other times, it's not arrogance, it's fear. A trader enters a position and immediately feels anxious. The candles move against them, and instead of trusting their stop loss, they close early, only to watch the trade reverse and hit their original target. Frustration builds. They re-enter impulsively, this time increasing their risk to make up for the missed profit. The market punishes the impatience, and once again, the account bleeds. Fear and frustration drive them to overtrade, taking setups that don't even meet their plan, until eventually the account can no longer survive. The scariest part is how subtle the process feels while it's happening. Traders rarely notice when they're walking into the trap. They tell themselves it's just one trade, just one exception, just one chance to recover. But those just one moments pile up until the entire account is gone. Blowing an account doesn't happen in one trade. It happens through dozens of tiny acts of self-betrayal. Each ignored rule, each emotional decision, each refusal to accept a small loss creates the avalanche that wipes everything out. It's easy to blame the market, but the market doesn't care. The market has no agenda against you. It doesn't know your name, it doesn't know your goals, and it doesn't care about your trades. The destruction always comes from within. Risk is not external, it's internal. When you blow an account, it's not the market that beat you, it's your inability to respect the dangers of risk. Before we dive deeper, let me ask you this. Are you struggling with fear, doubt, or overtrading? The truth is, most traders don't fail because of bad strategies. They fail because of bad psychology. That's why I created my ebook, Master Your Mind, Master Your Trades. It's packed with practical steps to control your emotions, stay disciplined, and trade like a pro. If you're ready to take your trading to the next level, Check the link in the description and pinned comment and grab your copy today. Now let's continue. Professional traders understand this. That's why they treat risk as sacred. They don't think of risk as something to be feared or avoided. They see it as the cost of playing the game. Just like a casino accepts that some players will win on certain nights, traders accept that some trades will be losers. But amateurs resist this reality. They see risk as the enemy, something to fight or escape from, rather than something to manage. And the more they fight it, the more it destroys them. This is why traders keep repeating the same cycle of blowing accounts, because the problem is never solved at the root. They try to fix their strategy when the real issue is their psychology. They try to find the perfect indicator when the real issue is their inability to accept a loss. They think more knowledge will save them, but knowledge without discipline is useless. Risk will always expose the truth about a trader's mindset. If you cannot control yourself, the market will control you. The first step to breaking free from this destructive cycle is brutal honesty. You must admit to yourself why you blow accounts. Was it because your strategy failed, or because you failed to follow it? Was it because the market was unfair, or because you risked more than you could handle? You cannot fix what you refuse to confront. And until you admit that your relationship with risk is broken, you will keep repeating the same mistakes, no matter how much you learn. In the end, the psychology of risk is about respect. Respect for the market, respect for the math, and most importantly, respect for yourself. Every time you blow an account, you are not just losing money, you are eroding your self-belief. You are teaching yourself that you cannot be trusted, that your word to yourself means nothing. And once that belief sets in, trading becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy of failure. But when you respect risk, when you treat it as the foundation of every decision, you begin to rebuild that trust. You start creating a new identity, a trader who can be relied on to do the right thing, even under pressure. Blowing accounts is not a mystery. It is not bad luck. It is not destiny. It is the predictable outcome of ignoring the psychology of risk. And the sooner you confront that truth, the sooner you can begin to change it. Because until you master risk, you will never master trading. There's a moment every trader knows well. The trade is open, the candle is moving, and your heart begins to race. You see the profit flashing in green, and your mind whispers, if I just added a little more, this win could be massive. Or you see the loss growing in red, and that same voice tells you, if I just hold on a little longer, maybe it'll turn around. That voice doesn't come from the charts, it comes from within. It is the voice of risk seducing you, pulling you away from logic and into the arms of destruction. Most traders think they lose because of bad trades, but the truth is, they lose because they are tricked by the feeling of risk itself. Risk feels like opportunity. It feels like freedom. It feels like the path to fast money and quick success. But risk is also a trap, carefully disguised as possibility. It whispers promises of glory, and then it takes everything when you get too close. This is why so many traders find themselves repeating the same behaviors, no matter how many accounts they've lost. They aren't trading the market, they're trading their own emotions. And risk is the puppet master pulling the strings. The seduction of risk is subtle. It doesn't appear all at once. It starts with little nudges. Maybe you win a trade, and instead of celebrating discipline, you think, I could have made more. That thought plants the seed. The next time you trade, you increase your lot size. Not because it fits your plan, but because you're chasing the feeling of what could have been. Sometimes it works. You catch a big win, the rush floods your body, and suddenly the plan feels boring compared to the thrill of high risk. You tell yourself you've discovered a shortcut, but in reality, you've just been lured into the casino, and now the house owns your emotions. Other times, the seduction shows up after a loss. You take a hit, your pride is bruised, and instead of accepting it as part of the game, you hear the whisper, you can get it back. Just risk more on the next one. That single decision becomes the gateway to revenge trading. You're no longer focused on the market, you're focused on your ego. The need to erase the pain of being wrong drives you to double down. And before long, you're fighting not the market, but yourself. The account balance suffers, and eventually, it collapses. The dangerous part about risk is that it doesn't just affect your money, it affects your mind. The more you give into it, the more it rewires your brain. Risk becomes addictive. The highs of winning and the lows of losing create a cycle similar to gambling, where traders become hooked not on the money itself, but on the emotional roller coaster of trading. You'll hear traders say, "I don't even care about the money, I just love the action." That statement should terrify you, because it means risk has taken full control. At that point, trading is no longer a business, it's a drug. Every trader enters the market with a dream of financial freedom, but once risk seduces them, they start trading for the thrill instead of the goal. They stop thinking like business owners and start behaving like gamblers. A business owner accepts small, calculated risks for long-term growth. A gambler bets everything on the spin of a wheel. And this is why so many accounts vanish. The trader never realizes that risk has shifted their identity without them even noticing. The market is designed to expose this weakness. Every flicker of a candle, every fake breakout, every sudden spike tests your discipline. The market doesn't force you to break your rules, you choose to. But the illusion of risk makes it feel impossible to resist. You see green and think, more. You see red and think, recover. Those thoughts are the trap. If you can't separate your emotions from risk, you'll always be at its mercy. Here's the cruel irony. The very thing traders are chasing with excessive risk, freedom, is the very thing they lose when they fall for it. They want financial independence, but they end up chained to their screens, glued to every tick, unable to walk away. They want peace of mind, but instead they live in anxiety, constantly checking trades in the middle of the night, unable to sleep. They want consistent growth, but instead they burn accounts so often that they're stuck in a cycle of depositing, losing, depositing again, and hoping this time will be different. Risk doesn't give freedom, it steals it. Professional traders break free from this trap not because they don't feel the pull of risk, but because they respect it. They know it's seductive. They know the voice will whisper. They know the temptation will rise after a big win or a painful loss. But instead of fighting risk with emotion, they fight it with structure. They create rules so clear, so unshakable, that even when the voice appears, the rules stand stronger. It's not about never feeling tempted. It's about building a system that protects you when you are. But most traders resist structure. They see rules as restrictions, not protection. They think discipline is boring, and they crave excitement. They tell themselves, "I'll just take one more trade," or "I'll just increase my lot size this once." They treat trading like a game, forgetting that every click is real money leaving their account. By the time they realize what they've done, the damage is permanent. The seduction of risk is powerful because it disguises itself as logic. It never tells you, "Blow your account today." Instead it says, "Just one more trade." It says, "This one looks different." It says, "You deserve to win back what you lost." Each thought feels reasonable in the moment, but it's all part of the same trap. The danger is not in the market, it's in believing your thoughts when emotions are high. This is why traders who blow accounts often look back in disbelief. They ask themselves, "What was I thinking?" The truth is, they weren't thinking. They were reacting. They were under the spell of risk, seduced into abandoning logic and discipline. And until they learn to see through that illusion, they'll keep repeating the cycle, no matter how much knowledge they gain. The only way to resist the seduction of risk is to redefine your relationship with it. You cannot run from it, and you cannot eliminate it. Risk is part of trading. But you can learn to manage it, instead of letting it manage you. You can choose to see risk not as opportunity for excitement, but as a tool of survival. The trader who respects risk lasts. The trader who chases risk loses. If you've ever blown an account, understand this. It wasn't the market that destroyed you. It was risk seducing you into destroying yourself. The whisper will always be there. The temptation will always come. But the difference between those who last and those who quit is simple. The ones who last know how to ignore the whisper. The ones who quit listen to it until there's nothing left. And so the question becomes, when risk whispers in your ear again, what will you do? If you've been trading for any length of time, you've probably felt that little voice inside your head whispering, "Just one more trade." You see the market moving, you see setups that look almost perfect, and you feel like you can't just sit still. That voice tells you that if you don't take action, you're missing out on opportunities. And deep down, you believe that the more you trade, the more likely you are to make money. It feels logical, after all, if one good trade can make you money, then 10 trades should make you 10 times more money, right? But this is one of the biggest illusions in trading. The truth is, overtrading is one of the fastest ways to blow your account. It doesn't matter how strong your strategy is or how much technical knowledge you have. If you fall into the trap of overtrading, the market will drain your account slowly at first and then suddenly all at once. Why do traders overtrade? The answer lies deep in psychology. Overtrading often comes from a dangerous combination of emotions: the illusion of control, the fear of missing out, the hunger for action, and the inability to accept stillness. Imagine this: a trader wakes up, looks at the charts, and doesn't see any clear setups. Rationally, the best thing to do is wait, but instead, they feel restless. They think, maybe if I just tweak my entry, maybe if I lower my stop loss, maybe if I jump into this sideways market, I can catch something. They convince themselves that they're being proactive, when in reality they're being reckless. That's the illusion of control, the belief that simply being active somehow equals being in control of the outcome. The reality is, the market doesn't reward activity, it rewards patience and precision. Some of the most successful traders in history only take a handful of trades per month. Think about that. A professional trader, with millions in capital, may only take 3 or 4 trades in 30 days. Meanwhile, the average retail trader might place 30 trades in a single day. And guess who usually ends up broke? Overtrading happens because your brain is wired for action. In life, doing more often equals getting more. If you want to build muscle, you work out more. If you want to learn a new skill, you practice more. If you want to earn more money at a regular job, you work more hours. So naturally, you bring that same logic into trading. You believe that trading more equals earning more. But in the markets, this logic destroys accounts. Because here, it's not about volume of effort, it's about quality of decisions. One of the biggest dangers of overtrading is that it creates emotional fatigue. Think of your discipline as a battery. Every time you make a decision, every time you enter a trade, every time you check the charts, you're draining that battery. If you keep placing trades back to back, your emotional discipline runs out, and you start making impulsive choices. That's when you start moving stop losses, doubling positions, or chasing setups that aren't even part of your strategy. It's not that you don't know better, it's that your emotional battery is dead, and now your impulses are in the driver's seat. And here's the cruel twist. Overtrading gives you a false sense of control. It makes you feel like you're actively shaping your financial future. But in reality, every extra trade is a gamble that pushes you closer to disaster. It's like driving a car faster and faster through fog, because you think speed will help you reach your destination sooner, when in truth, the faster you go, the higher the chance of a crash. Let's get real with an example. Imagine 2 traders, Alex and Daniel. Alex opens his charts on Monday, analyzes the market, and sees nothing worth trading. He closes his laptop and goes about his day. On Tuesday, he spots a high probability setup, executes it perfectly, and walks away with a 2R profit. That's his only trade for the week, and he ends the week in profit. Daniel, on the other hand, hates waiting. On Monday, he takes 3 trades, 2 break-even, 1 loss. On Tuesday, he takes 4 trades, 1 win, 3 losses. By Friday, he's down 8% on his account. What happened? It wasn't that Daniel's strategy was terrible. In fact, one of his trades was almost identical to Alex's winning trade. But Daniel drowned his good trades in a sea of unnecessary ones. His impatience destroyed him. This is why the illusion of control is so dangerous. The more Daniel traded, the more he felt like he was in the game, but the more he lost. Alex, by trading less, actually gained more control over his results. Another aspect of overtrading is the addictive cycle it creates. Every trade gives you a dopamine hit. Win or lose, your brain gets that rush of excitement. It's the same chemical response gamblers feel at a casino slot machine. And just like gambling, it keeps you coming back for more, even when you're losing. This is why some traders place dozens of trades a day. It's not strategy, it's addiction. So, how do you break free from this trap? It starts with awareness. You need to recognize that overtrading isn't about making money, it's about feeding an emotional craving. Once you see that, you can start rewiring your habits. One powerful tool is a trading journal. If you force yourself to write down every trade before you take it, something magical happens. You pause. You think. You ask, does this trade actually meet my rules, or am I just bored? That small moment of reflection can save you from dozens of bad trades. Another tool is setting a strict daily or weekly limit. For example, you might say, I will only take a maximum of 3 trades per day, and if I lose 2 in a row, I stop trading for the day. These rules protect you from yourself. They create guardrails so you don't drive your account off a cliff. You also need to redefine what it means to be a good trader. Many beginners think being a good trader means always being in the market, but professionals know that being a good trader means waiting, sometimes for days, for the right setup. The market will always be there tomorrow, but your account won't survive if you keep treating it like a slot machine today. One final truth. Overtrading is often rooted in fear. Fear of missing out. Fear of being left behind. Fear that if you don't act now, the opportunity will vanish forever. But here's the irony. There will always be another trade. Always. The market isn't going anywhere. What really disappears forever is your capital if you keep overtrading. To conquer overtrading, you must learn to love stillness. You must embrace boredom. You must see discipline not as a limitation but as freedom. The freedom to protect your account. The freedom to wait for perfect opportunities. The freedom to stay in the game long enough to win. Because at the end of the day, trading isn't about doing more. It's about doing less, better. It's about taking fewer trades, but with higher conviction. It's about recognizing that your edge doesn't come from activity. It comes from patience, precision, and control. The illusion of control will whisper in your ear, telling you to click that button one more time. But real control is walking away. Real control is saying no. Real control is choosing quality over quantity. And once you master that, you'll no longer be the trader who blows accounts chasing every move. You'll be the trader who protects their capital, grows steadily, and survives long enough to thrive. That's the paradox of trading. The less you do, the more you win. If there's one enemy that silently ruins more traders than any technical indicator ever could, it's ego. Ego is that invisible voice that says, I can't be wrong. I know better. The market will turn around. I'll prove it. Ego turns what should be a simple trading decision into an emotional battle for self-worth. And once you start trading to protect your pride instead of your capital, you're on the fast track to blowing up your account. Here's the painful truth. The market doesn't care about you. It doesn't care about your predictions, your analysis, or your feelings. The market doesn't owe you a win just because you worked hard. It doesn't respect your stubbornness. It doesn't reward pride. The only thing the market respects is discipline and humility. Yet, traders keep making the same mistake over and over again. They let ego drive the car. Picture this. A trader takes a trade, expecting EUR divided by USD to go up. But instead, the market starts dropping. Rationally, the smart move is to accept the small loss, cut the trade, and move on. But instead, the trader says, no, I can't lose. I'll just hold it a little longer. It has to go back up. The loss gets bigger. Then, the trader doubles down, adding more positions, trying to prove they were right all along. Within hours, a manageable negative 2% loss turns into a negative 20% disaster. Why does this happen? Because the trader wasn't protecting their account, they were protecting their ego. They weren't fighting the market, they were fighting themselves. Ego is tricky because it hides behind logic. It tells you, I've done my analysis. I know this market. I can't be wrong. And at first it feels like confidence. But confidence is rooted in discipline. Ego is rooted in pride. Confidence says, I'll take the trade according to my rules, and if I lose, I'll move on. Ego says, I'm too smart to lose, and I'll bend the rules until the market agrees with me. Let me share a story. In 1998, a massive hedge fund called Long-Term Capital Management, LTCM, collapsed. This wasn't run by amateurs. It was managed by Nobel Prize winners, some of the smartest financial minds on the planet. They believed their models were perfect. They believed they couldn't be wrong. But when the unexpected happened, Russia defaulted on its debt. Their models failed. Instead of cutting losses, they doubled down. Their pride kept them from admitting mistakes. The result? They lost billions and nearly collapsed the entire global financial system. If Nobel Prize winners can be destroyed by ego, so can you. But why is ego so strong in trading? It's because every trade feels personal. You're putting your money, your time, and your analysis on the line. When a trade goes against you, it feels like the market is telling you that you're wrong, and being wrong is hard for humans to accept. From childhood, we're trained to associate mistakes with shame. At school, wrong answers earn red marks. At work, mistakes lead to criticism. So naturally, in trading, being wrong feels like failure. And to avoid that feeling, traders hold on too long, risk too much, and let pride dictate decisions. But here's the key mindset shift. In trading, being wrong is normal. Every trader is wrong, even the best in the world. A 50% win rate is considered great in trading. Think about that. Professionals are wrong half the time. They don't avoid being wrong, they manage being wrong. They don't let ego get in the way. The problem isn't being wrong. The problem is refusing to accept being wrong. One of the clearest examples of ego in action is revenge trading. This happens when you take a loss and immediately jump into another trade just to get it back. You're not trading a setup, you're trading your bruised pride. And usually, you lose even more. Ego tricks you into thinking you can force the market to give back what it took. But the market isn't your enemy. It's not out to get you. It's just doing what it does. The only enemy is your refusal to let go. Ego also shows up in position sizing. Traders often risk more than they should because they're so sure about a trade. They think, this setup looks perfect. I'll double my lot size because I can't lose. But no matter how perfect it looks, the market can always do the opposite. That one oversized trade is often the one that wipes out weeks of steady gains. So, how do you break free from the ego trap? It starts with humility. You must accept that you will be wrong often. Not sometimes, often. You must accept that losses are part of the game, not proof of failure. You must shift your mindset from proving I'm right to protecting my account. One practical tool is predefining your risk. Before you enter any trade, decide exactly how much you're willing to lose, say 1% of your account. And then, no matter what happens, stick to it. This takes ego out of the equation because you've already accepted the loss before the trade even begins. Another tool is practicing detachment. Remember, you are not your trades. A losing trade doesn't make you a loser. A winning trade doesn't make you a genius. You are simply executing probabilities. Nothing more, nothing less. Also, learn to celebrate small losses. It may sound strange, but every time you cut a trade at your stop loss instead of moving it, you've won, not financially, but psychologically. You've defeated ego, and that's more important than any single trade outcome. Let's revisit the story of Jesse Livermore, one of the most famous traders of the early 1900s. Livermore made and lost fortunes multiple times. What often destroyed him wasn't lack of knowledge, it was his ego. He would win big, start believing he was invincible, and then take reckless trades that wiped him out. His story is a timeless reminder. Knowledge is useless if ego is in control. Here's the paradox. The less you care about being right, the more successful you'll become. The less you trade to protect your pride, the more you'll protect your capital. The moment you stop trying to prove something to the market, you start trading with clarity. Ego whispers, you're smarter than the market. You can't be wrong. But wisdom says, the market is bigger than me. I can only control my risk. So the next time you feel yourself holding on to a losing trade, or adding more to prove you're right, stop and ask, am I protecting my account, or am I protecting my pride? That simple question could save you thousands. Because here's the ultimate truth. The market doesn't care about your ego, but your account does. And if you let pride drive your decisions, your account will eventually pay the price. Real strength isn't in being right. It's in admitting when you're wrong. Real mastery isn't in predicting the market. It's in controlling yourself. Real trading success isn't about ego. It's about humility. When you finally embrace that, you'll stop blowing accounts because of pride. You'll stop chasing revenge trades. You'll stop doubling down to prove yourself. Instead, you'll start trading with discipline, with balance, and with freedom. And that's when trading stops being an emotional war and becomes a controlled, calculated process. One of the most dangerous beliefs a trader can have is that they control the market. Not literally, of course, nobody thinks they can move trillions of dollars with a few clicks. But deep down, many traders behave as if their actions, their hopes, their timing, and their gut feeling have influence over what happens next. They believe the market owes them a win because they've studied hard, because they deserve it, or because they've already suffered enough losses. This is the illusion of control, and it's one of the most destructive forces in trading psychology. Let's be brutally honest. You control nothing about the market. Not the direction, not the timing, not the volatility, not the news releases, not the sudden liquidity grabs. You don't decide when a central bank cuts interest rates. You don't decide when a hedge fund dumps billions into a currency pair. You don't decide when geopolitical tensions suddenly cause a flight to safe haven assets. All of it is outside your hands. The only thing you control is yourself, your entries, your exits, your risk per trade, your ability to sit on your hands when nothing makes sense. That's it. Everything else is chaos, bigger than you, bigger than your analysis. Yet traders keep falling into the trap of thinking they can force the outcome. They hold on to losing trades because they just know the market will reverse. They add to bad positions, believing the market has to come back eventually. They ignore their stop loss because they think they can wait it out. This illusion of control makes them treat the market like a person who owes them something, instead of a system that simply reacts to endless forces beyond their grasp. Let me tell you a story. In the 1,980 seconds, a trader named Richard Dennis became famous for turning a small stake into hundreds of millions. He then trained a group of traders known as the Turtles, teaching them his system. Some succeeded wildly, others failed miserably. What separated them wasn't the system, it was discipline. The ones who failed thought they could outsmart the rules. They believed they could control outcomes by tweaking, guessing, or holding on longer than the rules allowed. The ones who succeeded accepted they had no control over the market, they only controlled how they followed the rules. That single mental shift was the difference between blowing accounts and building fortunes. The illusion of control often shows up in overtrading. You take one loss, then another, and instead of stepping back, you say, I'll take one more trade to fix this. I'll force a win. But the market doesn't care how badly you need that win. The market doesn't know you exist. Overtrading is nothing more than you trying to wrestle control out of chaos, and every time, chaos wins. Another form of this illusion comes from tinkering with strategies. Traders jump from system to system, indicator to indicator, thinking that if they just find the perfect formula, they'll be able to predict and control everything. But no system will ever give 100% certainty. Even the most tested strategies only offer probabilities. That's all trading is. Probability. You're stacking odds in your favor, not controlling the outcome. Yet ego makes traders believe they can find a way to eliminate all uncertainty. They want to control randomness. And in trying, they sabotage themselves. This illusion is dangerous because it feels good. It feels empowering to think you can bend the market to your will. It feels like strength, but it's weakness disguised as confidence. Real strength is accepting what you don't control. Real power is admitting that no matter how skilled you are, the market is always bigger. Think of it like sailing. A sailor doesn't control the wind, the waves, or the storms. No matter how experienced they are, nature always has the final say. A sailor's job is to adjust the sails, steer the rudder, and prepare for what may come. That's all. A reckless sailor who believes he can command the sea will quickly sink. But a humble sailor who respects the power of the ocean will survive storm after storm. The market is the ocean. You are just the sailor. Respect the scale. Respect the chaos. Respect your limits. There's also a psychological reason this illusion is so strong. Humans are wired to crave control. We hate uncertainty. In daily life, we control small things. What we eat, when we sleep, what we wear, what tasks we prioritize. This control gives us comfort. But in trading, the stakes are higher, and the lack of control feels unbearable. So the brain invents control where none exists. That's why traders create rituals. checking charts at certain times, using lucky colors on their screens, even praying for trades to go in their favor. Deep down, it's an attempt to grab control from a world that refuses to give it. But the cure is brutal honesty. You must remind yourself every day, I do not control the outcome. I do not control the market. I only control my process. If you can burn that truth into your brain, you'll stop blowing accounts from reckless decisions. Because most blown accounts don't come from bad setups, they come from traders refusing to admit they're powerless over the result. So how do you break free from this trap? First, surrender to probability. A single trade means nothing. What matters is a series of trades over time. Stop obsessing about being right this one time. Focus on executing correctly over dozens, hundreds of trades. That's where consistency is built. Second, shrink your trades. Big positions feed the illusion of control because you believe size will push the outcome. Small positions humble you. They remind you that you're playing probabilities, not guarantees. Third, detach from outcome. When you close a losing trade at your stop loss, don't label it failure. Label it execution. You didn't fail, you followed your plan. When you close a winner, don't label it proof you're smart. Label it probability working out. This mindset cuts the strings of ego and control. Fourth, journal relentlessly. After every trade, ask yourself, did I trade because of discipline or because I thought I could control the outcome? Over time, you'll see patterns. The more you admit your lack of control, the stronger your discipline becomes. One of the greatest traders, Paul Tudor Jones, famously said, "Don't focus on making money. Focus on protecting what you have." That's the philosophy of someone who understands the limits of control. Jones knew he couldn't dictate what the market would do, but he could dictate his risk, his entries, and his exits. That mindset made him a billionaire. Contrast that with gamblers in a casino. They think their hot streak means they're in control. They roll the dice harder, cheer louder, or blow on the cards, believing their actions influence randomness. It's laughable. But traders do the same thing when they over-leverage, chase losses, or hold on to trades in denial. Both are victims of the same illusion. Here's the raw truth. The less you try to control the market, the more successful you'll be. The moment you release that need for control, you gain clarity. You stop forcing trades. You stop revenge trading. You stop doubling down. You finally trade only what's in your control, risk, rules, and mindset, and that shift will protect you more than any strategy ever could. So the next time you feel yourself clinging to a losing trade or adding more positions to make the market listen, pause and ask, am I trying to control the uncontrollable? If the answer is yes, close the trade, step back, protect your account, because trading isn't about forcing the market to obey you, it's about learning to obey your own rules in a world of chaos. The market will never bend to your will, but your ego will always tempt you to try. Don't fall for it. The illusion of control is the most expensive lie in trading. Accept the truth. The only thing you can ever control is you. And that's more than enough, if you're disciplined enough to embrace it. In the world of trading, people often believe success comes down to finding the right indicator, the perfect system, or some secret strategy that no one else knows about. But anyone who has spent a decent amount of time in the market knows that those things only take you so far. The real difference between those who survive and thrive versus those who constantly blow accounts is emotional discipline. It's the ability to remain calm, focused, and consistent in the face of chaos. Emotional discipline is not about being free of feelings, because no human can remove emotion entirely, but it is about ensuring that your decisions are not controlled by fear, greed, anger, or excitement. When you look at why most traders fail, it rarely comes down to knowledge. Most traders understand concepts like risk management, stop losses, and trade setups. They know how to analyze charts, they know about candlestick patterns, and they've probably watched hours of trading videos. But when the time comes to actually execute, emotions creep in. They close trades too early, hold on to losers too long, or increase position sizes recklessly after a big win. This is not a lack of knowledge, it is a lack of discipline. Think about how many times you told yourself you would stick to your rules, only to abandon them after a loss or a win. Maybe you swore you wouldn't move your stop loss, but when the price moved against you, panic made you drag it further away. Or perhaps you promised you wouldn't overtrade, but after 2 losses you opened 3 extra trades out of frustration. This is exactly where emotional discipline matters most. It is the invisible line between consistency and chaos. The difficulty is that discipline goes against our natural wiring. The human brain evolved to survive, not to trade financial markets. When we see danger, our emotional brain tells us to run. When we see opportunity, our emotional brain urges us to grab it quickly before it disappears. In trading, this survival instinct works against us. A red candle feels like danger, so we exit too early. A green candle feels like opportunity, so we hold too long or jump in late. Our rational brain knows better, but our emotional brain often overpowers it in the heat of the moment. This battle between reason and emotion happens inside every trader. The rational brain, located in the prefrontal cortex, is responsible for logical thinking, planning, and decision-making. The emotional brain, which includes the limbic system, is designed for quick reactions and survival. When money is on the line, the emotional brain can hijack the rational brain. This is why so many traders behave in ways they later regret. They don't lack intelligence. They lack control over the emotional brain. Another challenge is the dopamine trap. Every trade, whether it wins or loses, triggers chemicals in the brain. The anticipation of a win releases dopamine, which creates excitement. This can become addictive, making traders crave the thrill of entering trades rather than the consistency of following a plan. It's why many traders overtrade, even when they know better. They're not trading their system, they're trading for the emotional rush. Let's look at some examples of lost discipline. A trader might hit a big win early in the week, then feel invincible and double their position size on the next setup. The next trade goes wrong, and the week's gains vanish in minutes. Another trader might set a stop loss at 20 pips, but move it when the market turns against them, turning a small, manageable loss into a massive one. Or take revenge trading. After a string of losses, a frustrated trader enters a random position with no plan, just to make the money back, only to lose even more. Then there's the trader who closes a trade too early, terrified of losing the small profit they already made, only to watch the market eventually hit their original target. These examples show how easily emotions ruin solid plans. They also highlight why discipline is so important. Emotional discipline prevents over-leveraging after a win. It stops you from moving stops. It keeps you from chasing losses. It reminds you to let trades play out as planned. Without it, you're doomed to repeat destructive cycles. Science confirms why discipline feels so hard. Research shows that willpower is finite. It works like a muscle that gets weaker with use. The more decisions you force yourself to make during the day, the easier it becomes to give in to temptation. That's why many traders lose control after hours of watching the charts. Stress also plays a role. Under stress, the brain releases cortisol, which suppresses rational thinking and hands control to the emotional brain. This is why high volatility often leads to bad decisions. And finally, habits matter more than willpower. When you train your brain through repetition, disciplined actions eventually become automatic, requiring less effort. So, how do you build emotional discipline? First, start with a written plan. If you don't have clear rules, you can't expect to follow them. Write down your entry criteria, risk per trade, maximum trades per day, and your exit strategy. Having this on paper makes it harder for your emotional brain to twist the rules. Second, use pre-trade checklists. Before entering a trade, ask yourself, does this setup meet my plan? Am I risking the right amount? Am I trading because of a signal or out of boredom or frustration? A checklist forces your rational brain to stay in control. Third, keep a journal. After each session, write down not just your trades but your emotions. Were you fearful? Greedy? Frustrated? Over time, patterns will emerge. You'll see when and why you lose discipline. Awareness is the first step toward change. Fourth, manage your body. Emotional discipline is not just mental, it's physical. Stress builds up in the body, and you can't think clearly when your body is tense. Simple practices like deep breathing before trading, taking short walks, or avoiding trading when you're tired or hungry can make a massive difference. Fifth, use automation where possible. Set hard stop losses and don't move them. Use daily loss limits to prevent overtrading. Even alarms can remind you to step away when you've reached your maximum trades for the day. Removing opportunities for emotional decisions makes discipline easier. Finally, practice small. Don't risk large sums while you're still learning discipline. When the stakes are lower, emotions are easier to control. This allows you to practice staying calm without the pressure of big losses. The power of emotional discipline becomes clear when comparing two traders. One loses a trade and immediately doubles his next position out of frustration, blowing a chunk of his account. The other loses the same trade, calmly notes it in his journal, and takes the next valid setup as planned. By the end of the week, the first trader is down heavily, while the second is either slightly profitable or at least stable. Same market, same setups, completely different results, all because of discipline. The goal is to make discipline automatic. That requires building habits and rituals. Have a consistent pre-trading routine, like reviewing your plan or meditating for a few minutes. Begin to identify yourself as a disciplined trader, not just someone trying to become disciplined. Your actions will follow your identity. And train gradually. Focus on one discipline challenge at a time. First, stop moving stops, then stop over-leveraging, then stop revenge trading. Layer habits until they stick. Emotional discipline is the hidden edge because it ensures you can actually apply your strategy consistently. It prevents catastrophic mistakes that wipe out accounts. It gives you peace of mind because you know you won't lose control. And over time, it compounds into predictable results. Many traders spend years searching for the secret system, when the truth is that the real secret is mastering themselves. The market will always be unpredictable. News events, sudden spikes, unexpected trends, these things will never change. What can change is your reaction. Emotional discipline allows you to remain steady no matter what the market does. It stops the cycle of fear and greed. It transforms chaos into opportunity. And ultimately, it gives you the staying power needed to succeed in trading long term. At the end of the day, emotional discipline is freedom. It frees you from panic, regret, and the roller coaster of inconsistency. It gives you control, not over the market, but over yourself. And when you control yourself, you finally have the edge that most traders never develop. Every trader enters the markets with dreams of success. Some dream of financial freedom, others of independence, and some simply want to prove that they can master the game. Yet the harsh truth is that very few make it past the first few years. The reason is rarely a lack of intelligence or strategy. It almost always comes down to psychology, the inability to manage risk, emotions, and discipline over time. But those who do survive, those who truly grow, are the ones who learn to treat trading not as a sprint but as a marathon. The real goal is not just making a quick profit, but achieving long-term survival and consistent growth. To survive in the long term, a trader must accept that the market is not something they can control. The market doesn't care about your dreams, your financial situation, or your hopes for a trade. It will do what it does regardless. Many traders fail because they fight this reality. They try to force profits from the market, overtrade when there are no opportunities, or gamble out of desperation. Survival begins with humility, the recognition that you cannot bend the market to your will. You can only control yourself, your plan, and your actions. This humility is what separates professionals from amateurs. Amateurs chase every move, desperate to capture every pip. But professionals wait for their setups and accept missing opportunities as part of the game. Amateurs blow accounts trying to prove they are right, while professionals accept losses as part of doing business. Amateurs think about how much money they can make, while professionals focus on how much risk they are taking. This shift in perspective is the foundation of long-term growth. Growth also requires consistency. Too many traders focus on hitting home runs. They want that one big trade that doubles their account in a week. But this mindset often leads to destruction. They risk too much, get wiped out, and end up back at zero. The traders who last are the ones who prioritize small, steady wins. They know that compounding works in their favor. Even a modest return compounded over months and years creates incredible results. Long-term survival is about stacking small victories, not chasing jackpots. Another key to long-term growth is emotional balance. When traders tie their self-worth to their results, Every loss feels like a personal failure, and every win feels like validation. This roller coaster is exhausting and unsustainable. To survive, you must detach your identity from your outcomes. You are not your wins, and you are not your losses. You are the process you follow, the discipline you maintain, and the decisions you make. When you anchor your confidence in your process instead of your results, you gain stability. This stability is essential for long-term success. One of the greatest enemies of survival is overconfidence. A few winning trades can trick a trader into believing they've mastered the market. They start increasing risk, skipping steps in their plan, and trading impulsively. This false confidence often ends in disaster. The market has a way of humbling traders who think they are invincible. That is why true professionals remain cautious even when they're winning. They celebrate victories quietly but remain aware that the next trade could be a loss. This humility, this balance between confidence and caution, is what protects them from ruin. Survival also depends on proper risk management. No matter how skilled you are, losses are inevitable. A long-term trader accepts this and structures their trades so no single loss can destroy them. Risking 1 to 2% of capital per trade may feel slow, but it ensures you can withstand losing streaks. Without proper risk management, one bad day can undo months of progress. Traders who ignore this principle may experience temporary success, but eventually, the law of averages catches up, and they blow their accounts. Risk management is not optional, it is survival. Beyond managing money, traders must manage energy. Trading is mentally and emotionally taxing. Staring at screens for hours, battling emotions, and enduring swings in profit and loss can wear anyone down. Burnout is real, and it destroys traders just as surely as poor strategies. Long-term survival requires balance. Step away from the charts. Build routines outside of trading. Exercise, sleep well, and spend time with people who ground you. A trader who burns out cannot make rational decisions, and without rational decisions, survival is impossible. Another aspect of survival is adaptability. Markets change. A strategy that worked in one environment may fail in another. Too many traders cling to outdated methods, refusing to adjust. Long-term growth requires flexibility. Professionals don't marry a single strategy, they adapt to the market's rhythm. They study, they evolve, and they update their systems as conditions shift. At the same time, they don't abandon their core principles of risk and discipline. This balance of adaptability and consistency keeps them alive through changing conditions. Long-term growth also requires patience. Some traders quit too early, walking away before their edge has time to play out. Others sabotage themselves by jumping strategies after a few losses. Both mistakes come from impatience. True survival means giving your plan time to work, accepting the ups and downs, and focusing on the bigger picture. Patience is what allows compounding to work its magic. Without patience, even the best system fails, because the trader never gives it enough time to bear fruit. Let's consider an example. Imagine two traders start with $10,000. Trader A risks 10% per trade, chasing quick profits. In the first month, he doubles his account. But in the second month, a losing streak wipes out 70% of his capital. Desperate, he increases his risk even more and eventually blows the account. Trader B, on the other hand, risks just 1% per trade. His growth feels slow, just a few $100s in the first months, but over time, his account compounds. After a year, his account has grown steadily. After 5 years, with compounding and discipline, his $10,000 has grown into something substantial. Trader A sought speed and lost everything. Trader B sought survival and gained long-term wealth. Survival also means learning to recover from setbacks. Every trader will face losing streaks, emotional mistakes, and periods of doubt. What matters is how you respond. Some give up entirely, convinced trading isn't for them. Others chase losses, digging their hole deeper. But those who survive take a step back, reset, and return with focus. They review their journals, identify their weaknesses, and slowly rebuild. Setbacks are inevitable, but they don't define your career unless you let them. There is also the philosophy of thinking like a business. Traders who last see themselves as operators of a business, not gamblers. Every trade is a cost of doing business, every loss is an expense, and every win is revenue. They don't risk everything on one idea, because no business puts its entire future on a single sale. They plan for overhead, they track performance, and they focus on steady growth. This mindset shift transforms trading from a dangerous gamble into a sustainable enterprise. Ultimately, survival and growth come down to self-mastery. The market is indifferent, strategies evolve, but the one constant is you. If you can control your impulses, respect your plan, and remain consistent, you can last. If you can't, no strategy will save you. Trading is a mirror. It reflects your strengths and your weaknesses. The path to long-term growth is really the path to mastering yourself. The traders who survive are not always the most talented. They are the ones who refuse to quit, who learn from their mistakes, and who maintain discipline when others give in to emotion. They understand that trading is not about winning every trade, but about staying in the game long enough to let their edge play out. They value survival over quick riches, process over emotion, and patience over greed. And here lies the great paradox. When you stop chasing fast success and focus on survival, you actually achieve the freedom you dreamed of. You stop blowing accounts, you stop repeating the same emotional mistakes, and you start compounding results. Long-term survival creates long-term growth. And long-term growth creates the financial and psychological freedom that every trader secretly wants. The path is not easy. It requires discipline, humility, patience, and emotional control. But for those who commit, the reward is worth it. Because in trading, the greatest victory is not in a single trade or even a single year of profits. The greatest victory is still being here, stronger and wiser, year after year, while others have fallen away. That is the true meaning of survival, and it is the only path to lasting growth.